Okay, let's jump right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to explore a deeply atmospheric, honestly pretty grim fable called The Architects of the Void Ledger. Now, right off the bat, I want to say this isn't just some spooky ghost story. It's actually a really profound philosophical journey. It maps out what's known as a tragic Fichtean dialectic. And hey, if you're not familiar with that term, it's just a framework where ideas move from a thesis, they crash into an opposing antithesis, and then they try to reach a unifying synthesis. So in our fable today, we're going to trace this massive collision between a rotting, desperate sense of nostalgia and an absolute sterile administration. And ultimately, we're going to discover the real power of our own creative potential. It's dark, it's mythic, and honestly, it is absolutely fascinating. So let's look at exactly how this story kicks off.
Listen to this inciting sentiment. The present is an open sewer. Modernity has rotted the warrior spirit of our bloodline. Boom. That just plunges us right into the grit, doesn't it? We are introduced to two kings wandering the bone-dry, industrialized borderland of Pomerania. And they're literally dressed in the moldering battle flags of their grandfathers. Their boots are just caked in the gray dust of a century they absolutely despise. They look out at the smoking chimneys of new textile mills. They see lawyers and merchants trading their ancestral nobility for, paper money. And they're just consumed by this visceral disgust for the present. They say they're looking for the higher man, but all they find are shopkeepers. So this quote right here, it perfectly establishes our narrative thesis. It's a total aggressive rejection of the now.
So that brings us to Section 1, the Rot of Regress, which is our thesis.
These kings, they perfectly represent the ultimate lost warrior archetype. I mean, have you ever felt so frustrated with contemporary society that you just wanted to escape backward? Well, for them, this societal decay drives their retreat entirely into an ancestral fantasy. The second king even carries this heavy ledger of ancient lineages, its pages stained with dried blood. They don't want a path forward. Actually, scratch that. They want a sovereign who will drag them backward, away from what they see as a shivering future, right into the clean, hard iron of the old crusades. The core danger here is this total rejection of vitality and the absolute paralysis of progress. By wallowing in this collective nostalgia, their eyes literally glazed with the yellow film of the past, they aren't building a movement, they're trying to build a monument. And by doing that, they're actively anchoring their own souls to a graveyard.
Moving on to Section 2. The bureaucrat of absolute zero, the antithesis.
So, out of the mists of this wild, breathing landscape, a pavilion appears, but it defies nature. It's stark, windowless granite, built with terrifying geometric symmetry. And sitting there at a polished obsidian desk is Freiherr Gotthold von Nichtses, the Baron. Talk about a brutal collision of forces. On one side, we have the lost warrior archetype, the kings, emotional, blood-stained, fiercely desperate to unbury the past, and they crash head-on into the modern administrative bureaucrat. The Baron is a vision of frozen Prussian order. He's dressed in the precise, lintless blue of the royal bureaucracy, his hair powdered to a blinding mathematical white. He is a scholar of the absolute zero, and right there on his desk sits the void ledger, bound in black calfskin, catching absolutely no light.
The Baron's entire worldview is, well, it's chilling. He tells them, I balance the equation of existence by reducing its friction to zero. He looks at human life, with all its dirt, hunger, messy politics, and the pulsing anima of being, as simply an equation that needs stabilization. To the Baron, this chaotic human life is just a problem to be solved by erasure. It's the ultimate inflation of the ego, this Faustian fist of logic. He tells the kings he is the cosmic scribe of the creed of negation. He doesn't innovate. He stabilizes. He views living, breathing humanity as mathematical friction that just needs to be deleted.
Which leads into Section 3, defining terminal nostalgia, the collision.
This collision is catastrophic. The kings, they're so fatigued by the messy pulse of being, they fall to their knees. They beg the Baron to save them, to give them a cure for the tragedy of change. And the Baron? He recognizes their sickness instantly. It's terminal nostalgia, a regressive sickness causing a complete rejection of the present, making men blind to the future and rendering them perfectly ready for his ledger. It's a dark Faustian bargain. The Baron promises to take their blood, their grief, their memories, and translate them into gears of perfect data, a sterile gem where time no longer moves. But to do that, he has to crush the anima, the vital spirit of life itself. The kings think they've found an anchor to save them. The Baron just sees an opportunity to delete them. And with 3 strokes of his quill, he calculates their deletions.
Now for Section 4, Metaphors of Dark Apotheosis.
So, the Baron's calculus takes hold, and the kings undergo a twisted ascension. It plays out in 3 horrifying metaphors. Let's break them down. First, the ossuary skin. The first king literally feels his living warmth wither. He peels dead conqueror's flesh to stitch onto his own. But dead skin doesn't pulse with life. He becomes the god of carrion, ruling a court of dust. Second, the bile chalice. The second king drinks only the bitter bile of his own memories to escape modernity. His soul turns inside out. He ascends as the deity of the great absence, trapped in this hollow frieze between what was and what can never be again. And finally, the gilded noose. A sovereign builds a massive throne from ancestral gold to escape the present, but the sheer weight of that nostalgia just becomes a noose, hanging him as a monument of static regret.
All these dark metaphors point to one terrifying reality: the total loss of future agency. Think about it. Dead skin cannot feel the future. If you wear the past, you ensure you have no sensory capacity for what comes next. By drinking from the bile chalice, your soul literally becomes a black hole of static regret, consuming its own ability to exist. And when you blindly worship the past, those heavy traditions act as an executioner's noose. If you refuse the innovation of the living, you just become a smiling corpse in the Baron's laboratory of nothingness. Your future is completely murdered before it can even take a breath.
And that brings us to Section 5, Zarathustra and Creative Potential, the Synthesis.
We definitely can't leave this story stuck at absolute zero. We have to find our Fichtean synthesis. We need to move way beyond the chilling preservation of the Baron's void. Look at the king's static ruin. They are regressive, completely paralyzed, and anchored to a dead past out of pure disgust. But compare that to Zarathustra's creative potential. Zarathustra doesn't deny the flaws of modern society, not at all. He sees the open sewers, the decay, the shopkeepers, just as clearly as the kings do. But his vision is transcendent. He takes the flaws of the present and uses them as a vital catalyst to innovate and forge something totally new. He pushes through the messy friction to create the future, instead of retreating and putting on the dead skin of the past.
Which brings us to our final and honestly most important question for today. Are you letting the heavy gold of nostalgia anchor your future to a graveyard? The Void Ledger is definitely a dark fable, but man, it holds a massive vital warning for us all. We can't let our frustrations with the present turn into a terminal nostalgia that just deletes our future. Instead, we have to embrace the messy friction of life. We have to use the flaws of today as our catalyst to forge a better tomorrow and really step fully into our own creative potential. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I really hope it sparks some fascinating thoughts for you and helps you look at both the future and the past in a completely new way.